Mr. David Palin.
Yeah.
What's going on?
You know, it's funny because everyone's talking about this big race up at...
okay, hang on.
Shall we begin?
You aren't stuck in traffic. You are traffic.
Let's begin now.
Please get that bicycle-shaped object out of this shop. Oh, no, dude. No mix and match here. Black bottoms or full-on kit. Pedal on, bro. Pedal on.
Let's begin now.
Oh, geez. Learn the hard way. Wider is better.
Today is Monday, August 12th, 2019. You're just downloading or listening to Bike Shop CX. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading, everyone. Music we're using on today's show is Bijou by Philly Run. As always, you can pick up this tune at the Free Music Archive where you can download it for free. Thank you, Mr. David Palin. Today on the show, we're going to continue talking about getting ready for Mr. David Palin.
Yeah.
CX is coming.
Cross is coming.
We can actually, not only is it past August 1st.
Yes, it is.
We have had official UCI cyclocross races. They're on the books.
They are out there.
CX is here.
It's here.
Actually. So
Cross is
there's
here.
That. So, but we're going to continue talking about getting ready for the North American cyclocross season, which is going to be here before we know it. And then we're going to talk about, it's always a yearly favorite when we talk about gluing tubular tires.
You could almost call it an annual favorite.
You can almost call it an annual favorite. So we're going to talk about some processes for gluing tubular tires. If people want more things about tubeless tires, let us know. Send us an email to bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
And we'll do more tubular stuff or tubeless stuff too. So that, and of course, viewer questions. I've got our sponsor stuff. What are you working on? All that's coming up. So that's enough of my yapping.
Let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it. The Bike Shop is open. Mr. David Palin, are you still there?
I'm here.
What's going on, man?
Oh, geez, wider is better.
Man, it feels like it's like we missed a week.
Does, doesn't it?
But we kind of did. So we apologize.
Most importantly, we apologize to Sonny Gilbert.
Why is that?
You didn't see the bad news?
What happened?
She had to suffer through workouts over the weekend.
With no Bike Shop CX to listen
Listening to the Gravel-Lot.
Oh.
We're sorry, Sonny.
So talk about torture on top of torture.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
man, oh man,
Yeah.
that's just bad. No,
Yeah.
we're just joshing because we love the
her.
Gravel-Lot.
We love those guys.
They're
man.
friends of the pod.
They are. Friends of the pod, the Gravel-Lot.
But our real promise is we do 2 a month,
yes.
right? So we're still on schedule for August to do that.
2.
And actually, to do 2 in August.
In a month.
And actually pushing that second show back has actually opened up another thing that we'll be able to talk about next show.
Right, that we wouldn't have been able to talk about.
We wouldn't have been able to talk about in the second August show if it was a week sooner. So it's going to work out pretty good in the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to wait an extra week. But
yeah. So, Sonny, you'll be happy about that piece as well.
Yes, I think Sonny will be very happy about what we're going to talk about on that next show, too. So it was worth the wait. It
yes,
was worth
indeed.
the wait. As always, it's always Bike Shop CX is always worth the wait.
Yeah. That's what I would say. Wash your ears out of those other podcasts you listen to. Refresh your ears. Make your ears happy again.
That's right. So, Mr. David Palin, I'm not asking you what are you working on.
Oh, good.
I'm just asking you what's going on.
What's going on, man?
I see the Sunday gravel rides are going hot and heavy right now, man. I mean,
heavy,
you're like in
yeah.
the middle of it right now, boy.
This is when people show up to all the rides, right?
Because actually, weather-wise, normally August is just brutal.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been.
It has not been. And it hasn't been rainy that much.
No. It's been like high 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, really good gravel weather. So,
and that was the original impetus of the 8 a.m. starts, was that it was getting so hot in July and August that
you had to
start early. Now, I start at 8. We make a big 2-hour loop, come back, pick pick up the stragglers at 10 and do a second loop, and we're
Yeah.
out for
So
the
if
part
people
of the
are
day.
people interested in joining, it's actually two different. I mean, a lot of people just show up for the second loop, right, at 10.
Yeah.
And do the
and a lot of people show up at 8 and leave.
Yep. And then
You know, some people have life that they got to do on Sundays,
right.
and that works out well too.
Yeah. So that's cool.
So hey, join us. I know we've had some guests come from time to time, viewers that have met us for rides. Come meet us. We're at the Meyer at the junction of Zeeb and Jackson Roads off of 94.
If
Exit
people want
169.
If
Just
people want
come in.
more info on that, do you want to give them your email, or do you want them to just email the show?
Yeah, or you know what I found? A lot of people will direct message me or whatever they call it on the Instagram.
On the Instagrams.
Yeah,
that's
just
a good way.
hit me up on Instagram, and we'll see you there.
Yeah, if you're curious about it and you want to just ask Mr. David Palin a question like, "What's the pace? What if this happens?" Because you're nervous, maybe you haven't done a lot of gravel riding. This is a perfect ride if you're a beginner.
Yeah, especially the 8 o'clock.
Especially the 8
to bring a
o'clock.
lot of people that are
The beginners tend to come out at 8 more, and then a slight. But a beginner, if you're a beginner and all you can do is show up at 10, you'll still probably be okay.
We
so-
are a friendly, inclusive ride.
Yes.
So if you are indeed gravel curious, as we call you, come on out.
It's really cool, and you're getting the groups are like, I mean, it varies from week to week, but there's some weeks with decent size groups. I mean, you could have a serious pace line if you guys all lined up. Do you guys ride like that more? I've never done it, by the way. It's just so that people know, or you guys spread across the road
It's
and
a
talk.
friendly ride, man. It's not for some people it will be a workout, right? It all depends on your level.
Yeah.
We tend to throttle it back, because for most people it's our chance to see each other.
talk.
We haven't seen each other all week.
But sometimes
we
it's just,
talk
even if
and-
you're not even if you're just rolling at 13, 14 miles an hour, it's kind of nice to just drop into the pace line.
Yeah, and we will, especially on
if you have a
windy
headwind,
days.
yes.
Yep, windy days. And then for those that want to come out and, spend a day out there, because we've gone and done 60, 80 miles in some days, and it's dictated by whoever shows up. There's always someone that wants to go long, and if you say, hey, let's go longer, generally there's going to be people to go with you. And there's also many options to just say, okay, you turn left here, go straight down that road, and you'll be back where we started.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you want to go, but you think the mileage may be too high, come out anyways.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, sometimes we'll get a little frisky, but we always will wait at any turns and any cross streets. We'll always wait and
let
everyone
group back up, mass back up.
Yeah. And
for our
generally
critical mass
speaking,
people.
my smart, because I'm not the fastest one out there, I don't tell people the route while we're out there. And then I know that when we get to a turn, they're going to wait for me. Or
they're just going to end up in Ohio.
as my good friend and fellow gravel grinders will say, we'll just drop them off the front. If someone's going too hard and not playing nice, we take a left turn. It's always a left. Yeah, for sure. So anyone, come out, enjoy us. We know, like, Mateo that moved to Ann Arbor years ago has found the ride. He's a weekly regular now.
Yeah.
He keeps threatening to send us an email, but still I've yet to
hasn't
see it,
happened
Mateo.
yet.
But
Oh, well.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But so then on
how
top
about
of
you?
that-
What's going on with you?
Oh, man.
I see some new equipment in the backyard.
Ooh, the Airstream. I have picked up the Airstream.
Nice.
I
nice.
posted a picture on Instagram of
the barn cat and
my wife and one of our cats. Yep, Sunny, checking it out, and oh my god, it is a ton of work getting in something new like that.
Yeah,
I mean, just because you think, oh, it's gonna. There's so many details you have to like take care of before you can like take that thing out. I mean, you could just take it out. Sure, it's ready to go. But, you know.
Not in the style that Scotty D likes.
I mean, think about it. So you got 2 beds in there, right?
Yeah.
So what do you need? All the
sleeping
sheets,
bag.
all the blankets, all the pillows.
A sleeping bag.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
You can tell which one of us is not married.
Yeah.
Right. But you need all that stuff for 2 beds, and then, you know, all your kitchen stuff. What are we going to have for utensils?
And
drinking,
why one of us is not
where
married?
we're going to have to cook. All the stuff for the shower. You know, I mean, it's an endless list. We have a huge list, and we're going down at purchasing stuff as we go. So.
Yeah. I'm the same way with my tent. I have a tent, and I'm trying to figure out, like, do I keep the good silverware? Which one do I move there?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, too, it's just like learning how all the systems in it work.
Yeah.
It's just things like, what do you do if you're running on city power? What do you do if you're running off the batteries? What do you do if you're running on city water? What do you do if you're running off your freshwater tank? So it's just a lot of stuff to, like, wrap your head around. And I've never towed anything before in my life, so
this is the funniest part of this story for me. Right, you get the coolest toys, and yet I grew up. I learned to drive at 12 years old, pulling a boat trailer.
That's right.
It's the funniest thing.
So that's like another learning curve. I actually my wife and I went out and practiced at the local high school parking lot.
You need to do that again in the winter.
Yes.
And start doing, donuts.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go out much anywhere. But anyways, that's what I've been doing. It's and it'll be up at Alma. So if any viewers are coming to the Alma GP.
Yeah, it'll be worth your while to come up there to see the Airstream.
for no other
reason.
Well,
we're selling tickets for tours, I think.
I don't know about that, but it's pretty small.
Get PT on the phone.
It's the smallest Airstream that you can possibly get, which means it's
not really a stream so much. It's like a riblet or something, right?
Which means it's as much as, like, the huge trailers that everyone else sells, right? And I'm not talking, like, I'm just talking about as far as, like, the care and the upkeep and all that stuff, right? It's like, oh, my goodness. So, all right, well, Mr. David Palin, I do have another question for you, though.
What's that?
What are you working on?
It's all ball bearings. We'll get to that again, I'm sure.
Yes.
But man, did you see? I sent a picture out of that external headset that I worked on.
Yeah, and by external, that's the most external headset I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a custom painted BMX bike. Rattle can. I'm not talking about spray bike.
No,
it's like
we're talking about like house paint. Right?
I think the wheel set was painted with the same accidentally, kind of thing.
They painted. Was there paint on the tires?
A little bit. Anyways, with the caged bearings, they weren't loose bearings. They're caged bearings with half of the cage hanging out,
ripped out,
the bottom side of the headset, and of course, when we told the guy we're running a week behind in repairs or whatever the waiting period was, he said, well, I'll just ride it until then. It's like, we certainly can't force you to leave it here,
right?
But this is a safety issue.
Yeah,
this isn't just an inconvenience.
Yeah, the balls are like the grease. They're stuck to they're stuck to the frame by the grease in the picture you sent me. I think, yeah. They're out. They're completely out of the headset.
Oh yeah,
just like
hanging to right or right.
Yeah.
It was kind of a mess. So we get that thing all put back together, and all I can do is really kind of try to do my best to emphasize the importance of routine maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why this guy said, I'll continue to ride it was because he didn't have a car.
Yeah, I know. Dude,
and I get that. I understand
it. We get that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So, is it fixed now?
It's fixed.
There
running like a top now.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, I know a lot of people, some people don't have a lot of money, but bearings cost like 2 cents a piece.
Yeah.
You can go find some returnable cans and have enough money to pay for bearings.
No, that's true. That's true. So, and do it yourself. Even, preaching to the choir again, people that listen to this show tend to do their own work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit tricky because it was you know what I'm talking about there. It was not a threadless headset.
Threaded.
It was a threaded headset.
A quill stem.
That's the word I was trying to think of. So you do need to have just a little bit of understanding of how to take it apart.
Uh-huh.
But talk about straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, there's no shiz numbers we're talking here, right?
Right.
It's just find the bearings. In worst case scenario, you don't need to replace it with cage set. Just put some grease in it and
that's
put
better.
I
mean, it depends. I go back and forth on a bike of that quality. It's like, just put another cage bearing in there. But if you want to really do it right, it should be packed loose. I mean, that's the better way to do it. So
stay on top of your stuff is what is.
Yeah, especially because if it is it's his only mode of transportation. That makes it even more important, right? So like I said, the cost of those few bearings that cost 2-3 cents a piece versus not having anything to ride is huge.
Yeah.
So makes it even more important. So
yeah. So that and the other thing is,
Yes.
what are you working on?
What am I working on? Oh, so I got a few things, actually.
Of course.
One,
He always has to up me by at least one.
did you see that picture I posted on Instagram? I got a lot of comments on it yesterday with the kickstand.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So we had a bike come in. It had a kickstand, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know the typical way, a kickstand, it's on the non-drive side of the bike, and it comes down.
Pointing back,
Typically
generally, when
points
it's up.
back towards the rear wheel, and you flick it down, and it hits the ground. This one was bent. So imagine a kickstand that's up, right? Mm-hmm. And instead of coming down, and say that's it's pointing to 3 o'clock.
Yeah, it's along the
XY axis, or the X-axis.
I was going to say the chainstay, but yes.
The X-axis, right. And you move it down to 6 o'clock when you stand the bike down.
Right.
This kickstand was bent, was still pointing to 6 o'clock, but the other way. It had gone, instead of going from 3 straight down to 6 o'clock, it went from 3 past midnight, past 9 o'clock,
yeah,
and then down to 6 o'clock, bent over the crank arm the wrong way. It was a steel kickstand. It was just a very inexpensive Walmart bike, but the steel kickstand bent around the crank spindle. It was a one-piece crank, so crank arm, crank spindle, kind of the same thing. Bent over that to the left, backwards, and down. Yeah. That's where...
Not ideal.
That's where the grinder becomes your most important tool. In your box.
Yeah.
You had to cut it off. We had to cut it off. There's no...
So
luckily,
did
it's a
you
cheap
talk
kick.
to the owner? I mean,
No.
had it
No, he wasn't there.
somehow got caught up in... Was it in the direction of the travel?
Yeah.
Did he get it caught in the...
Several people on Instagram did say, I hope you're going to talk about on the show how this happened. And the truth is, I have no idea how that... I can't even think how it would have happened. Can you? I mean, happen.
What happened
short
was...
of somebody doing that on purpose because they wanted to do something stupid, I can't picture how that would happen. Yep. So anyways, so there was that.
If it gets flared out...
That would be different.
It could get picked up by the crank arm and then wrapped around itself.
The force
was it in that direction?
Yes, but the force...
Was it a heavy rider?
The force, though, to bend that kickstand, it's almost bent back on itself. I mean, that's a lot of force.
Come on, we're not talking about the heavy-duty...
True. That is true. That is true.
Here.
That is true. So the other thing I'm working on is, remember me talking about the horse cart, the horse cart wheel?
Yeah, the wheel.
So I got that fixed.
Yeah.
And I did such a good job.
Yeah, they brought you the horse.
He
wanted to put the cart in front of the horse, and now you're doing the horse.
I did such a good job. They brought the other wheel in for me to do. So I did do that.
They didn't notice the shimmy when both wheels were off.
When they were both off, they balanced each other. Now something feels weird in that other wheel.
When I leaned to the right.
And it was as trashed as the first one. Yeah. Just loose balls out of the sealed bearings everywhere. But anyways, we got that fixed. But the other thing I'm working on, Mr. Dave Palin.
Holy mackerel, you've been busy.
Gluing. What am I gluing? What time
Looks like
of year
I picked a bad week to stop sniffing glue. Here's your movie reference, folks. We're gonna let you know. We're gonna pause here for a moment.
What movie reference? What movie did Mr. David Palin just reference?
There we go. Okay, let's move on.
And so is gluing tubulars. This is actually for some triathlon bikes.
Yes,
well, actually, a triathlon bike. I understand for the pros, that's one thing.
I was going to go here, but now
for the common person doing just your typical half Ironman, whatever, I don't know why you would choose tubulars.
I would say.
Yes. Are you going to carry a tire?
Here's the thing.
Why would you do that? I just don't understand.
Okay, yes, you have to carry. If you're committed, you're going to have to carry a tire. Then the question is, do you know and can you replace it?
Yeah.
And so let's say yes. Then the question is, risk benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Tubular tires ride really nice.
Of course, yes.
If you're in that half iron position, laid out on that bike, man, it's nice to have a nice rolling tire. I will tell you, I rode tubulars on the road, and I loved them. there is that sense of risk. I also would put sealant in them.
Yeah.
But there's that sense of risk when you're out there that if something goes wrong, you're kind of messed up for a while. Yeah. I will also tell you that for those of you that are considering riding tubulars on the road, go to eBay and find whatever triathlete that's out there that is doing exactly what Scott has experienced, because they get one flat and then they're selling the other tubular and the one or two backups that they bought dirt cheap. You can, honest story, that's where I picked up a lot of tubular road tires triathletes saying, I thought it was a good idea, it felt good, then I flatted, no more, and they're selling tires for $10.
I mean, if you're like I said, if you're a pro, I get it. Definitely. You know, for sure. One, they're not paying for the tires. Mm-hmm. Two, they want the max. Little things like that could make the difference for them. Yeah. But if you're just Jane Doe doing a triathlon, I would really, really recommend tubeless.
I'm not a huge fan. We've talked about this before. I'm not a huge fan of tubeless for road.
Oh, my God. Tubeless road are great. Dude.
I know. I'll come along eventually. I did get disc brakes. Eventually. But here is a place where I think if your option is tubulars or road tubeless, road tubeless all the way.
Yeah,
all the way.
You do get a better ride than clinchers, and then if you do get a flat, the repair process is the same as it would be with a clincher. Right. So obviously you're not gonna plug it or anything. You're gonna throw unless you had a really serious. But then I'm just gonna boot it and put a tube in and go. For me, road tubeless, I mean, that's what I ride on any of my road bikes is road tubeless, and the ride is great. Put a 25 on there or something, and go. So anyways, but I'm cleaning in tubulars for this Tri Guy. So, that's what I'm doing, which fits right in with what our tech topic is going to be for the day today.
I mean, I'm going to call you Segway Sam now.
Because we're going to talk about gluing procedure for tubulars for cyclocross here in a minute. But first, Mr. David Palin.
Yes, sir. I do.
How much sleep are you getting?
Not enough. Not enough.
And how would you know that?
I would know that because I get messages from longtime viewers that say things like risk of overtraining. You consistently worked harder than your body was prepared for while having poor sleep. Match intense periods of strain with sufficient sleep to maintain recovery.
There you go.
That's the kind of message that you get when you subscribe to
Whoop Whoop. Yes, we're talking about supporter of the network, Whoop. Go to whoop.com. Check it out. Use the code BikeShop. You get a discount on your membership. You don't pay anything for we're talking about the Whoop bracelet.
Strap.
It's the Whoop Strap 3.0, I think now.
With 3.0 comes in white and pink. I know those two colors.
Yeah, it comes in all kinds. And it's very low profile, right?
It is.
It's cool, but it's not like, oh my God, this big,
it's a great
huge
conversation starter too.
There you go. It's not this big, huge thing on your arm or your wrist. Very sleek and elegant looking, and it actually approaches your training from a different way, other than a lot of training tools.
Yeah, a lot of things. A lot of coaches, a lot of athletes are coached around how hard to work. When to go out and do an interval, when to go out and press harder, when to work harder, when to run faster, or bring your heart rate up higher. Whoop, on the other hand.
Not Whoop.
Whoop, on the other hand, tells you how you're doing on the other end of that. Because obviously, adaptation is the intersection of working hard.
This is getting heavy.
And letting your body adapt to that extra strain and load you've put on it.
Exactly. So it approaches it from the recovery side. It's really cool, and it's kind of it gives you some interesting things that maybe you hadn't thought about before in training, and maybe some ways you can improve. So go check it out, whoop.com. Use the code word BikeShop. You'll get your discount. They're supporting the Wide Angle Podium Network, and we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate people getting out and checking out their products.
Yeah, for sure. And tell them that Scotty D sent you.
Yeah. All right, Mr. David Palin.
Yeah, though.
What?
I'm a good sleeper. We've talked about this a lot.
Yes.
And the only thing that really is giving me that kickstart in the morning, as we segue once again, the thing that gives me that kickstart in the morning is the one and only Grimpeur Bros coffee. Now, I know that you're sitting there with your full Schleck on. Yes, your full Schleck on coffee. I have chosen to go with Hello Cyclocross Friends this morning.
Yeah.
And as much as we like to boost our own brands, because we get something when you guys go and treat your taste buds to some Grimpeur Brothers.
Because it's so yummy.
I have to say, again, Dan, I'm a Dan fan. That's my new hashtag. I'm a Dan fan.
We got I Dig Doug, and I'm a Dan fan.
There you go.
Okay.
Dan is
the man.
He is such a good guy.
I know.
And the work that he does with Grimpeur Brothers, the goodness he brings to the world.
Uh-huh.
Did you see who they just picked up?
Who's that?
That would be Miss Carolyn Mani. Is now
Teammate
have her own supporter coffee.
Sonny Gilbert.
Yep. So Sonny and Carolyn both have their own.
There you go. You want to support what they're
as
doing?
well as,
It's as simple as buying coffee, along with buying our Hello Cyclocross Friends and
the full Schleck.
So,
Get
get over to grimpeurbrothers.com. If you don't want to remember how to spell that, just go to Widening a Podium, and there's a link there. You can get to Grimpeur Brothers. Order those, and it helps us out because who should people support, Mr. Dave Fallon?
Support the people that support our sport.
All right. Well, let's go on to talk about some tubular gluing.
Yeah.
This
is something new. Have you ever done a tubular glue?
Have I ever done a tubular glue? Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Many, many times. So, all right. We're going to talk about tubular gluing, and let's assume what I thought we would do. This is not going to be a real in-depth thing, and the reason I know there's probably people going, "You guys have already talked about this," and we have.
Saying that, yes.
But there's so many questions around gluing tubulars. There's so much mystique, and there's so much magical talk around gluing tubulars. So I'm going to give my opinion of how to glue tubulars. It's how I do it.
Yeah.
And you can just take it from there. And if you want to incorporate your own ways of doing things and other things,
just understand that if you do it any other way, it's wrong.
We're not going to go through and do an exhaustive cover of every way that every step someone might or might not take in how they glue tubulars. So, all right. Are you ready, Mr. David Pound?
I'm ready.
I'm going to assume
you're
starting with new stuff.
Nope. No, because this is where.
No, but here's why.
Let's go back to this is where you should be right now, right? And that's why this is part of our Where You Should Be series.
Right.
Many people are coming from their old equipment.
Yep.
And they don't have brand spanking new sparkly rims.
I get that. But here's the difference. If you don't know how to assess whether or not your glue is okay to reuse,
don't reuse it.
Then you should remove it and start from basically a new. I'm calling it new, meaning all the old glue is cleaned off.
Sure, but how do we get to there? That's
what I'm saying.
That's a big question that most people
have. If you don't know how to assess that, then you should err on the side of redoing it rather than the side of reusing it.
Right.
And if you do go that way, then you're technically at a new setting again, right?
Yes.
Your rim, everything is the same as if you're doing it brand new from scratch.
Right.
Because doing a redo glue job is a whole different thing that we're just not going to go into and go crazy with. So if you have any doubt, you should remove your old glue completely. Once you commit to removing your old glue, you are committed all the way.
Okay.
You can't put a little acetone on and kind of clean it. No. If you commit, once you put some kind of solvent on there to start removing the glue, you are committed to removing all the glue.
So, Scotty D, you and I usually line up. We don't have to talk things out, and I know what you're thinking. Here's my point here. Yes, they should. Break it back down to clean wheels.
Yes.
So let's talk about that process.
Uh-huh.
We know acetone's involved now because you said acetone. Right. There are many mechanisms and methods of cleaning the rims.
Okay. You want to talk about how do you clean the rim?
Yes.
That's all you had to say. Why did you?
I thought I did. All
right. So, we can talk about that for some. There's a lot of methods of cleaning a nasty old rim.
Right.
Acetone is one. Acetone and alcohol are both considered fine to use. They will not leave any kind of residue.
Right.
I usually use either one of those as the very final step.
Yes, I usually use the alcohol to do finish cleanup of anything that's
of almost
left
anything,
on,
like a lot of things,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, brake
Yep.
rotors. I mean, there's a lot of things. Breaking surfaces on rims, etc. So, but before that, there's a couple things I like to. A lot of people, some people have trouble with the Effetto Mariposa stuff.
Yeah.
I do not. It works pretty darn good for me, right? I think the secret is, and this is it's almost like the consistency of a gel. It's a little bit thin.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a thin gel is kind of how I would describe it. And you put that on, you spread it on. One of the things that you can't do with that, though, is leave it sit for a long time.
Yes, but you do need to leave it sit.
Correct.
You can't just like put it on a rag and rub
wipe it
and
off.
think that's going to be good.
So you got to let it sit, from my experience, 15 to 20 minutes.
Yep.
Right? So you leave it on for 15 to 20 minutes, then remove it, and it works much better, in my opinion.
You're a green scrubber pad kind of guy? What do you use there?
Well, there's a couple things. I'll talk about that in a second. Because the other thing I really like is the Dumont-Tech citrus cleaner.
That's what I've been using.
And that stuff is a little bit thinner. Mm-hmm. Smells really
Doesn't
good.
it? Yeah.
Makes your whole work area just
and not having to
smell
work with a
citrusy.
respirator.
Oh,
is
it's
so
great,
much nicer.
Man. So I get good results. Now that stuff you can let sit. I've been able to let that stuff sit longer than the 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That stuff can sit for however long you want it to, and it'll still loosen up the glue.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot more expensive, from what I've been able to find, than the Mariposa stuff. But some people like that fact better, because then they put it on at night, go to sleep, come back,
Yeah.
and they can start doing some work removing the glue. The other thing is, one of the techniques that Mark Legg talked about last year when he was on is heat, right? Either it takes a pretty heavy-duty hair dryer or a heat gun if you've got some good experience. Just be a little careful with the heat gun, because it's called a heat gun for a reason, and you can overdo it. And then people will make, and this is good no matter what of these things you're using, some kind of scraper, right? Some way to scrape the rim, and there's all kinds of things. One thing is, some people use like tongue depressors. Mm-hmm. Because you have that nice arc, and a lot of times that'll match the arc of the bed of the rim perfectly, and that gives you a good scraper. They're a little brittle. An old
tire irons.
spoon.
Oh,
A lot of old spoons actually have a curved back of the handle too, right? So that gives you like a second diameter along with the tip of the spoon, that might help you work. And if you have a spoon that's close but doesn't match exactly, this is what your grinder is for. Right? Grind it down. Make it
this
fit
is not
perfectly.
the spoon that you're going to bring back into
this is
the
a spoon
Airstream.
that's like done, you're done.
Yeah.
It's just done. So do a little grinding, and don't leave any sharp edges, of course.
No.
You have to say everything on this show.
Yeah,
with
we
Mr.
do.
David
We do.
Palin. Go ahead and shape that. The other thing you can shape to fit is old tire levers.
That's what
those
I've seen
work
a lot
really good. The Park ones that are the flat ones that fit well in your saddlebag, those are great to grind once they get old. Grind and make into a radius. And the good thing about those too, and with the spoons too, I guess, is you can make several different shapes that are slightly different.
Right. Yep.
Because maybe you just need to get some edge work done here and scrape that off.
So label them so you know which tires which rims they work well with.
Which one works best? Sure. And then you heat it up till it's gooey again, and then you can scrape it off and work your way around. One tip, if you're using a heat gun, is I recommend you pushing you heat up one portion. You're doing this a portion at a time. You scrape that portion. Don't then, if you're sitting in a chair, right, with the wheel between your legs, turn the wheel away from you, and then heat up the next portion behind it.
Otherwise you end up with this beautiful arch.
You end up with this nice
in your
hot
leg.
rim that you just heated up with sticky. You can't get 100% of the glue off perfectly, and you have some glue that's still a little hot.
So there's the one exception. If you have not shaved your legs, this is a good method for hair removal as well.
Turn it away from you and then do the next pour. By the time that gets back around, it's cool by then. So just a little tip.
The safety tips you don't hear from everything else.
There, right?
If your rims have decals on them, be aware that using a hot gun, a heat gun.
Yep. You have to be careful
lift
of
those labels.
Yep. So you got to watch those. So that's all stuff. And then as a final step, then I usually use acetone or alcohol. If you use acetone, definitely use gloves. And alcohol, I usually don't use gloves with just rubbing alcohol because we use that for all kinds of stuff.
It'll dry your hands out.
It'll dry your hands out, but other than that, not a huge deal. So, all right, there we go. That's the way, the processes that I use. Don't use any kind of crazy solvents or anything like that.
No. Toluene. Do not use toluene.
Especially if you have carbon rims, because you don't know what's going to affect the epoxy of your carbon. You don't want to even be taking the chance that's going to be doing something.
Yeah.
So, the other thing is we are eventually going to want to glue things back to this rim. So you don't want any really bad solvents like that hanging around and ending up in your base tape. So, all right. Then I usually, let that sit and make sure they're dry. And then you're essentially back to new, right? As far as the surface goes. All right. So, the process for gluing with a new setup or a completely clean setup. First thing I always do, one, you're going to stretch your tires, right, Mr. David Fallon? You got your brand new tires. Here's another thing. When they come in the box and they're all folded up and wrapped up, immediately when you open that box, I'm not going to be gluing these for 2 weeks. Take them out of the box, put some air in them, and hang them somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Let them get their shape. And let them sit and hang. Let them work all those folds that they've been folded up for who knows how long.
Right.
Those will all could add to difficulty when you're gluing and trying to get that tire to sit on that rim. So especially if you've got a couple weeks, if you're on the ball and you've already ordered your tires in June or July.
Yeah. If you're listening to the show and you haven't ordered your tires yet, get on that right away.
You're in trouble.
Yeah.
So get some air in them and let them sit for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, just holding their shape, regaining their shape. Then you're going to take them, should have a stretcher rim. If you don't have a stretcher rim, you can use the rims that you're going to glue on.
As long as they're clean.
As long as they're clean, and put them on those. So you want to mount them on those with no glue, nothing on the rim, nothing on the tire. Just get them on there, get them inflated to, a decent high end of what the normal range is for the tire pressure on them, and just let them sit at least 24 hours. But if you can let them sit for 2-3 days, that's great. If you want to keep adding air to them to keep the pressure up over that time, that's great. No problems there. And just let them sit and stretch out as much as they can. Any tips for that, Mr. David Pound? I don't recommend doing the old tried and true thing. Remember how mechanics used to put it around their shoulders and put their knee? Okay, so I have done that in a pinch, right?
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of tires, so I know I can be really careful when I do that. What you have the tendency, if you've never done glue to tubular before, don't do that.
And
because
honestly,
you will overstretch it. You will keep going until it snaps, and then back it off, right? So don't do that.
Don't do that
unless you really know what you're doing.
And honestly, stretching tires is important, but a cyclocross tire, unlike a road tire, that fit isn't so tight that it's critical to getting it on.
Yeah.
You do want to stretch it because you don't want it to stretch after it's been glued and then not be round anymore.
Right.
But the key to getting it on, you'll be fine with a cyclocross tubular just with minimal stretch.
Stretching it on the rim. Correct. I agree. So, all right. So we've got the tire stretch. It's time to go. If you have stretch rims, just leave those on while you're doing this. If not, take them off the rims you're going to be gluing them on.
Right.
First layer of glue goes on the rims. If you want, you can do a very, very light sanding of the rims. I'm not a big proponent of going crazy and sanding the rims. I think that's I think that's one of those things that kind of seeped into the culture of gluing tires, and it's just kind of been there. And if you look at the research that Chip Howitt did, there's no the numbers are not different.
Of the past,
it doesn't.
It made sense. It made sense when you had wooden rims.
Yeah, the force it takes to rip a tire off when it's sanded versus not sanded,
insignificant.
There's no difference. Yeah, no significant difference there. So it's not a necessary step. What it is doing that I do still is cleaning. Sanding is cleaning. So it's going to get any last little residue. If you take more than 1 minute per wheel to do this, you're doing it for too long.
Yeah, Scotty D will come to your house and admonish you.
So if you're spending 5 minutes per wheel sanding, you're sanding too much.
Yeah.
Okay. So do a quick sand, then a final wipe of alcohol to get any sandpaper residue or anything like that off. Now we have a clean rim.
All right.
All right. Start gluing. First layer of glue, acid brush, toothbrush. Some people prefer toothbrushes. I don't like the way toothbrushes would do it. I like having the acid brush. But if you like the way a toothbrush works, use a toothbrush. It's fine. And there's even different bristles on different acid brushes. You will find you might like one better than the other. If you've used an acid brush and be like, God, this is really more difficult than I thought, try buying a different acid brush. You might get ones with longer bristles, softer bristles. I like to buy the ones with real long bristles and then cut them to whatever length I'm going to need based on whatever I'm using them for. If I'm using them for grease, I usually cut them about midway. If I'm using them for tubulars, I leave them a little longer and maybe just cut off a little bit of the end. It also helps the end from being so spread out and you get a little bit more control.
Yeah, I like them to be a little bit on the stiff side.
You like the stiffer ones?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, there's and there's some that are wider, which are good for some rims. Yeah. Some that are skinnier, which are better for others. So just keep messing with it. You can accomplish the same thing with any brush, no matter what. If you just might have to work a little bit harder for it. So, all right. So you do your first layer of glue. Start at the valve hole. Mm-hmm. So that you know where to end, right? And you think, well, but it's obvious.
It's not.
It's obvious only on the first layer.
Right.
Because you have glued and non-glued. Once you get a layer on there, it's not as obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's dry to the touch by the time you get around.
I mean, it's still tacky, but yeah, by the time you get around, it should be tacking up a little bit. I'll show you how to check. When you're doing your layers on your rim, your goal, the strength comes from multiple thin layers of glue. It's way better to have more layers of thinly applied glue than it is to have one big, fat, thick layer. Okay? So we're going for thin layers, and the secret is you want to go all the way to the top edge of the rim. Okay? If you look at a cross-section of the rim and you lay your finger across it, you should be wearing gloves, by the way, and you lay your finger across what would be the rails on a clincher, but it's just kind of the rise on a tubular. You lay your finger across that and pull it up. You should see little strings of glue chase your finger up as you pull it away from the rim. So there should be glue all the way up to the top of those edges.
Yes.
On your first layer especially. So all the way around, hang that rim, do the other wheel. Mm-hmm. Same process, beginning to end.
Now go find a good podcast, cup of coffee, and your whoop strap, because you're going to have to go overnight.
Yeah, in 24, I like to do it 24 hours at least. Yeah. Let that glue sit on there, that first layer sit on there.
Which brings me to a very important point here. A, if you're a cyclocross racer and you're riding on tubulars, do not put this off till 2 days before the race.
No.
And B, if you are a cyclocross racer and choose to have a shop glue your wheels for you,
still don't put it off.
If you bring them in and they say, oh, yeah, we can have it back to you tomorrow or in 2 days.
Yeah, they're not doing it right.
They're not doing it right.
Yeah. All right, so let that sit a day, then go back and do your second layer the next day. Exactly the same way. You start at the valve, and you'll just develop your own technique as far as how much to put on, how to get around the spoke holes, that are in the rim. You'll work around that. I like to do the best way to do this for me is to put it in a park truing stand. Mm-hmm. And I do the space, depending on how many spokes the wheel has, I'll go 2 to 3 spokes at a time on the rim with one applicator. So I usually work out of a can of glue rather than the tubes because I do a lot. But I'll take some glue on the brush, enough to do 2 widths between 2 spokes, and then I getting more out of the can. If there's more spokes, I might go 3 just because that gap is shorter, and I'll go 3 spokes at a time, getting it up on the edge. And staying away from some's going to go in the spoke holes. You can't avoid it completely, but just don't be, gobbing stuff down in there. Yep. So all the way up on the edges, do 2-3 spokes, rotate, dip, 2-3 more spokes, rotate, dip, all the way around. So once you get your second layer on, now you're at the point where if you have the time, and this is one of the things we were talking with Mark about last year, if you have the time to let these sit for a few days,
even better.
With 2 layers on, that can be a really good thing.
Yep.
Right? You're basically letting those 2 layers become very solidly secured. In general, again, if you read the research that Chip did, it takes the mastic glue that we use on glue and tubulars 100 hours to get to maximum completely dry.
Yeah.
After that point, it's really not drying anymore. You get to a usable dryness in 8 hours, but really, and in 24 hours, you're at I want to say 85-90% of dry.
Send those nasty emails to bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
So, all right. So when you get to 2 layers, if you can let it sit 2-3 days, that's great. I think Mark said he let them sit for 2 weeks with 2 layers on. Mm-hmm. In those days, right before, on the last day, because you're going to need at least 1 day of drying for this, it's time to glue the tire. Correct. So the secret with the tire, there's a lot of tips as far as how to hold the tire. People will inflate the tire partway, and that's a good idea, because if you do that, it will start to spin, and the base tape will all turn to one direction, and then you can pinch it in the middle, and then you have a giant figure 8 that you can use to put the glue on. When you're gluing the base tape, a couple things. One, the absolute critical thing is gluing edge to edge. You should not have non-glued edges on your base tape. I see this all the time, even from pro mechanics. Okay, they do not glue all the way to the edge of the base tape. I even want a little bit of glue right at the edge of the base tape,
where it meets the
rubber, to be kind of wicked up into the base tape from the edges, right? And let that glue. That will also help seal off that base tape from water getting in there while you're riding. So get it on a CX tire especially. Get it all the way to that edge without getting it on the rubber. You don't want to have glue all over your tire either. That looks janky. You don't want to look janky either, Mr. David Palin.
It's all about the look.
So edge to edge, what that does when you're doing it edge to edge is it makes this a very slow, tedious process.
Oh, I thought you were going to say slow tire. Based on my racing, that does indeed turn out to be true.
If you get on there and you think, I can just slap some glue down the center of this base tape, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
It makes it take a long time. You have to be very careful getting right up to the edge and not over it too far, and then back up to the other edge and all the way around the tire like that. The other thing is make sure you pay special attention to where the valve is, right?
Yes.
It's easy to just paint up to the valve from both sides and not think about going around the valve. So definitely
very important thing there.
Some time to do that. So.
And the reasoning, peoples, yes, your tire will stay on, but that is the first place that you will get water seepage in.
Yes,
and it will start from there and start moving out.
Yep. So a nice, good amount of glue on there. That's it. You don't have to do layers on the base tape. Once the base tape is saturated, layers are not necessary.
No.
It's you're done with the tire, right? Yeah. So let that sit for that final 24 hours of your rim drying. The next day, you're ready to apply your final wet layer. Typically 3 is enough, but 4, if you want to do 4, you're perfectly welcome to do 4 because you've been doing really thin layers. That's great. 4 is fine. But the minimum is to do 2 layers on the rim that are dried, 1 layer on the base tape that is saturated and dried, and now we're going to do our final layer that's going to bond all this together. Ready, Mr. David?
I'm ready. Let's do
it.
it.
Just do the same way you've applied the first 2 layers to the rim. You go all the way around. You get that on there. Now you have to set the tire on. So your tire is set. You don't have to do nothing wet on the tire. Not needed. I like to position the tire. I usually get a clean piece of cardboard, right, on the ground.
Right.
I position the tire against my knees, kind of at an angle so that one edge is touching the cardboard at the bottom, right?
Wheel,
even though it has a little glue on it, I know, but there's no way around
because
this.
It's clean cardboard,
cleaned off,
not dust and dirt
no
on this
dusty,
thing. Yep.
dirty crap that's getting in it. And then with the valve hole facing up towards me, I'm going to take the tire and start with the valve hole. I'm going to pull to the side as hard as I can. Well, almost as hard as I can. You will feel this tire like stretch a little bit, right?
You will.
Put the valve in the valve hole, down, let it make sure it's seated. Maintain your pressure. Now, what I like to do as I move out with the tire with my hands, when I get to the point where my knees can then help assist my hands pulling sideways.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I think I do.
So I'm standing crouched over the wheel, right?
It's creating not a very pretty picture in my mind, but okay.
I got my hands on the tire, pulling against each other as I'm crouched over the wheel, right? I get to this point where my knees...
This is always when the phone rings.
Right? Where my knees can push on my arms as well. I'm doing that too, right? Because it's getting harder and harder to pull. If you do that, by the time you get to, say, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, you've gotten a lot of the slack out of the tire, right? Continue on around till you get to 6 o'clock, and you will probably have a little bit of slack left, enough for that to flip over the edge.
Yeah. Because getting it over the edges is the tricky part.
That is the hardest part.
You're going to drag that wet glue up over the rim strip.
What's going to happen is, the tire is going to be short at that far end, and you're going to roll it up onto the sidewall. The sidewall is going to roll up onto the freshly glued surface of the rim, and you get a big swath of glue. And you know what? People that tell you that doesn't happen to me, yeah, it does. It still happens occasionally.
Either the glue is too dry when you're doing it,
right,
or you're lying.
It still occasionally happens to most people. So if it's your first time, don't worry about it. Just
don't sweat
do it, straighten it out, and do it. Once you set, so that wheel pops on there, you get the base tape on. Once you've gotten it on all the way around, you want to immediately,
that's quickly,
start to center the tire on the rim. Okay, that you want to get that as soon as possible.
Yeah,
done.
It gets harder by the second
because it's drying, right? You're like, because remember, the first glue you started putting on there, that was at the beginning of the glue, that final layer. So that's been on there that whole time. You went all the way around the rim, right? And then that time to put the tire on. So start getting that. I like to start at the valve because the valve tends to be centered because of the valve itself.
It has to be,
right? And then work around from there, stand it up, and spin the wheel, holding the axle. Right, so you can see the tire spinning in front of you. If there's a big wobble in the tread, you'll see it. You can identify where it is and go and straighten that out.
Yeah.
Also, look at your base tape around the edge. Is it about the same width
around the entire
over the
edge,
rim all the way around? If you see a point where all of a sudden the base tape disappears and then comes back 5 inches down the rim, if you flip that rim over, now it's sticking way up on that side. So that's a point where you got to straighten it. So center that rim as much as you can.
We didn't say it ahead of time, but we maybe should have mentioned when you had it clean and fresh and no tire on it, that was the time to true this wheel.
Oh, yes, because especially if you got radial problems, right? Because you can't do radial true on a tubular unless you rip that sucker off.
Right. All right.
So, no, good point. Also, I also forgot to mention, before I start doing the centering of the tire, I like to add a little bit more air pressure.
Just enough that it takes shape. But if you put in too much, it's going to force that tire on and make it very difficult to true.
So I like to add a little bit of enough pressure so that I can now easily grab the tire and move it, and actually it has shape so I can see how it's going to spin.
Yeah. Do you ever use the tire pliers?
I mostly use those on clinchers because I have a clincher bead that's like sunk down and won't come up. That's really the only time I use those. So center that all the way around. And now at this point, I like to Some people will use a broom handle.
That's my method.
Or some kind of stick. I like to do that. I'll generally deflate the tire most or all of the way, and then I will point the valve at the ground, have the valve at the ground with a broom handle underneath it. Mm-hmm. Think about the shape of a broom handle, and I'm going to run the rim along the broom handle, one end to the other, until I've done a full revolution. I usually do 2 revolutions of pushing it onto the rim. If you don't have a broom handle or anything, it's okay. Just use the flat ground. It's still better than not have it, than doing. You should do this step whether you have a broom handle or not. Right. Even if you're just doing it on the flat ground. If you want to do it on a carpet, that can help a little bit because it pushes more. It takes a little bit more shape. Right. But if all you have is a cement floor, fine. Still do it. And get that thing pressed on there really good. Then I like to inflate them to near max pressure, see what's going to happen. Really take care, because remember, and Mark pointed this out last year, remember what happens when the tire was off the rim and you inflated it? What did it do? It rolled.
Yeah.
Right? So I really keep an eye on it when I put it up to max pressure. Make sure it holds its line. It usually would for that short amount of time. And then I will lower the pressure down to more like half to a third of what the range is for the normal pressure for that tire. And then I'm going to let them sit as long as I can to dry.
Right.
8 hours is the minimum. But like I said, they're not considered completely dry until like about 100 hours for most kinds of glue. So if you can let them sit for 24 hours, that's a real good sweet spot. That's really good. If you're under a time crunch, 24 hours is a really good drying period. And then go out and use them. Be a little tentative on them the first time, making sure you're testing them to see how they're going to ride. Is everything going to hold? And go from there. Also, when you're completely done, one thing to check is use your fingers and kind of pry the tire away from the rim a little bit. You should, those strings of glue I mentioned, when you put your finger down on the rails of the rim and raise it up and you get those strings of glue, you should kind of see those strings of glue coming off the rim onto the tire, right?
This is all before it's fully dry. This is right when you're mounting the tire.
That's what I said. I forgot to mention. Just to make sure you've got that glue nice and all the way up on the edge, right? And actually, again, before you ride them, give them a quick check, all the way around, making sure there's no big, huge spots that you missed or anything like that.
It's always a good idea to check these things before you
check them routinely, even if you've been riding on them. And, I check my tubulars all the time just to make sure everything's still good with them. So, all right, that's the general basic process for doing your tubular gluing. I hope everybody, if you haven't done this before, get out there and try it, man. Don't be afraid.
And as we've told people before, try it on a friend's bike first if you're not really sure.
If you have somebody that can show you the process, how they do it, and they've been doing it and they're confident doing it, that's great. But, I was gluing tubulars way before I had somebody teach me how to glue tubulars, right? And they didn't come off or anything. So,
and with the YouTube thing out there nowadays, these kids,
but there's some really crazy stuff.
I've said it before. We'll say it again. You're pointing at me. I know Calvin at Park Tool.
Oh,
that's a reference.
Great.
That's your go-to reference.
That's who taught me how to do it.
Don't learn from Fred or Fran out there that has this secret method that knows the way around.
Yeah,
just find a reputable person.
A couple other things I just want to mention really quickly. CX tape. Typically, if you're going to use CX tape, you would use it before that final layer of wet glue. When you've had those 2 layers on there that are going to dry. I use or don't use CX tape depending on the fit of the tire to the rim.
Yeah, so let's be clear here, because when we're talking about CX tape, we're not talking about Effetto Mariposa tape.
No. We're talking about the stuff that's been around. Really, the purpose of the CX tape is to fill any deep gaps that your rim might have.
Right.
So that you're having...
traditionally, road rims had a deeper gap because you had a smaller circumference tire, so it could fit and fill that gap.
Depending on the rim, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but sometimes CX tires would have that because they're bigger, and if the rim is smaller, then you have this gap down the middle at the bottom. So, yeah, you just got to kind of assess that fit. If you do it without tape and you notice that they're rolling off,
That could be the reason why.
Then go back and redo it with a layer of tape. You don't have to strip the rim all down,
right?
But redo the tire with a layer of tape. So I just assess the rims, decide what. I don't just automatically use tape on everything. I know there's some people do, and that's great. And if that's what works, that's fine. There's no problems with that. If you have any questions, I'm sure we're going to get tubular gluing questions, Mr. David Pound.
bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
That's bikeshopshow@gmail.com. So I hope to see more people using tubulars. I understand. I get it. They're the best riding tire for cyclocross, but they're labor intensive. I understand.
Indeed.
And they're money intensive because you can't just switch treads, right? You're either committing to one tread or having multiple sets of wheels.
Yeah, each tread is a different wheel set.
Is a whole wheel set. Right. Yeah. So I get all that. So, Mr.
And
David,
nowadays, sorry to jump in on you. I know you're going to something next, but nowadays, the tubeless technologies that are out there,
very high quality.
Good.
Yes. It's getting harder and harder. Tubulars are still the king. If you want to talk with everything else being equal, what tire is going to ride the best? It's still tubulars.
Yes.
Right.
And at that tiny low pressure, still tubulars.
Still tubulars. But do all these other things outweigh that advantage? They might for you, and it might be totally legit and a perfectly good solution for you. So,
but as we say all the time with our wheel build challenge, this is the history.
Yeah.
This is where it is. This is part of the shape your legs, glue your tires, right?
Shape your legs, glue your tires.
And if you're doing the glue right, you could be doing both at the same time.
Right. Oh, that's funny. So, all right, Mr. David Pound.
Yes, sir.
How's your health?
Do you know something I don't?
We're talking about our other sponsor for the show right now, Health IQ.
HealthIQ.com, right?
HealthIQ.com/WAP for Wide Angle Podium. And they have been with the Wide Angle Podium for a long time.
Almost since its inception.
I think so. And they are just amazing. And what do they do, Mr. David Allen?
They go out there and help you find, I was going to say below market rates, but they're not really below market because they're part of the market, right? You get very low rates on your health insurance because it's not just based on...
Not your health insurance.
I'm sorry, I said health insurance. Life insurance. Life insurance.
Life insurance, yes.
It's not just based on your age and whether or not you smoke.
Right.
And whether or not you're sedentary lifestyle.
Right.
There's a lot more to figuring out your expected life insurance rates.
Absolutely.
So if you live a healthy life,
yeah.
And if you listen to us, let's make it clear, you do.
Yeah.
You laugh a lot.
Right.
You enjoy yourself. You enjoy life.
The endorphins that you get from
that alone makes you can outlive your life insurance.
Right. So healthiq.com/WAP. A great life insurance company. If you're in the market for life insurance, if you don't have any life insurance, you should. And this is a way, if you're going to commit to a active lifestyle, Health IQ is letting you know that, hey, we're here. You're the kind of person we want to be covering. So they use more scientific, I'm going to even say, approaches to figuring out rates using different metrics that some athlete, if you're a highly trained athlete in some areas, you might be skewing the more common metrics. So they have different metrics specifically for athletes. And if you can score elite on the questionnaire, you get better rates. And if you're at that point where you need new metrics, you're going to score elite.
Oh, you
it's
are.
Not, yeah. It's just awesome stuff. They're great supporters of cycling, specifically even. So if you have a chance, get over to healthiq.com/WAP and support the people
that support our sport.
Amazing. So
it's pretty straightforward.
All right, Mr. Dave Palin, are we ready for viewer questions?
I'm ready.
We actually got quite a few
and good ones at that.
I mean, partly because it's been an extra week, but not that. So do you want to start off or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
All right, I'm going to start off. This one is from, I believe it's pronounced Curran from Whitewater, Wisconsin. He says, what is up, Scotty D and Mr. David P?
That's straightforward. Let's get things covered.
No nonsense.
That's very Wisconsin.
It is. I love Wisconsin.
I do too.
I'm
going to Waterloo. You going to go to Waterloo?
I am.
Yeah.
I am going to be there for that. And
I'll see you in Waterloo.
a big part of my family is actually from Wisconsin, so Wisconsin is one of the most underrated states as far as how beautiful it is. If you've never driven through Wisconsin in the spring or summer, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right. He goes on to say, I have a Jameis cross bike that uses SRAM cranks with a BB386 bottom bracket. When overhauling it over the off-season, I noticed the non-drive side cup had come out of the frame 2 millimeters. This caused the crank spider on the drive side to rub on the frame. Can the BB just be pressed back in, or is there something wrong with it? If I press it back in, can I put spacers on the spindle between the drive side crank and the bearing to keep this from happening again? Thanks.
That's not supposed to happen.
I would not space that on the drive side.
No.
I would keep an eye on that. I would press it back in, maybe take it out, check it, and press it back in. You can always...
I was going there.
Loctite.
I wasn't going there.
Don't be afraid of medium strength Loctite, especially on a press fit, okay? It's not, even on a threaded fit, you shouldn't worry about it. But on a press fit, you especially don't have to worry about it. But don't be afraid. You might want to Loctite that stuff in there.
Yes.
Make sure you're not, don't just use grease. Clean all that grease out of there. Use Loctite and see if that holds it. I think you'll be satisfied. But I would not space that. You don't want to space those. They're meant to be pressed all the way into the frame. So I would not space that on the crank side. And just keep an eye on it. Keep a close eye on it. And now that you know what to look for, if it does even start to happen, you should be able to get it before the crank is
it's
hitting
worked
the
its
frame.
way out 2 millimeters. That's
not
a lot. Insignificant.
Yeah.
So I might even consider going with a wheels manufacturing threaded.
Sure, absolutely.
Threadless.
That could be another solution.
Yeah.
If you got the funds to just to repurchase another bottom bracket. I don't know. This one might be worn out or not. He doesn't say, but you could just try pressing it in, Loctiting it till this bottom bracket wears out, and then consider something like a one of those, the threaded ones.
Yeah,
for sure. So, all right. Well, thanks for that question. That was awesome. Good, nice spending some time in Wisconsin. So
sure.
Let's move on, Mr.
Where are we going next?
That's up to you.
Okay, I was thinking let's go to. Oh, I don't know where we're going, but we're going to talk to Robertito.
Robertito.
Hello.
That's Bobby, right? That would be, I think, translated
little
as Bobby.
Robert.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Scotty D and Mr. DP. Thanks.
And he says Scotty with E's, not Y's.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
And underscore D.
And underscore D. Yeah.
And Mr. DP.
Mr. DP. All lowercase.
Straight to the point. I'm not a very big person. I can be done with just lowercase letters.
Lowercase suits me just fine.
Thanks for the amazing show you produce. Truly phenomenal and a joy to listen to.
Oh.
All right. Thanks. All right. What else
is my
you got?
Favorite email of the week. Yeah, let's just stop.
Let's just move on from there.
All right.
This is why he was being so nice to us. He had 2 questions.
Yeah, he's buttering us up, so we'll answer them both.
2 questions that I would love your insight on. The Salsa Fargo has a SRAM Apex 1 drivetrain, but the front cranks are SRAM Eagle fitted to a 73-millimeter bottom bracket. The All-City Gorilla Monsoon also has a road drivetrain fitted with a 73-millimeter bottom bracket. Am I correct in thinking that out of drivetrain pieces, the front cranks and the rear cassette are the most interchangeable between brands and drivetrain series? They simply don't need to match. So, can I put a road drivetrain designed around 68-millimeter bottom bracket on a mountain bike with a 73-millimeter bottom bracket and mountain bike cranks, and there won't be any chainline issues? As long as I have all the parts to fit, basically hub spacing, axle diameter, etc., no issues? This is a great question that we should just put off here and send it to Bill. Bill is the answer man for this question, is he not?
He loves bottom bracket stuff.
He does. The deeper into the tech moray makes Bill Shiken happy.
Okay, so, there's a lot of questions and stuff going on in here, but let's try and just piece together some of it. Front cranks and rear cassettes are the most interchangeable between brands and drivetrain series. Cassettes. Let's
Yes.
start with cassettes. SRAM and Shimano are interchangeable. Mm-hmm. They both use the same standard. Campy is not.
As we approach 11 speed.
As we approach 11 speed, well, they're still not interchangeable because
Correct.
your hubs, the grooves in your free hub body are different.
Definitely not. Yeah.
On Campy.
Right.
But if you have a Campy 11-speed wheel, it can run in a Shimano 11-speed drivetrain.
Or ergo,
that can be made to
a SRAM 11 speed.
Or exactly, or a SRAM. You can make that work. So there's some interchangeability with 11 speed. But SRAM and Shimano, everything fits the same. You can put a SRAM cassette on a Shimano hub and vice versa, no problem. Cranks, it depends on your standard and what's going on. You can go back and forth between some 73 and 68 stuff with spacing stuff and making things work. It's just going to depend on how everything lines up. There is no universal, yes, you can always do this and it's going to work.
Right.
It depends on too many things. The best way is you got to kind of build stuff and see what happens, Mr. David Palin. For a lot of
yeah,
things.
unfortunately.
But can you put, what does he say? So can I put a road drivetrain designed around a 68 BB on a mountain bike with 73 bottom bracket, mountain bike cranks, and there won't be any chain? I think, if I'm reading this right, I think what you're saying is yes, it's okay. Because your crank, as long as the crank is fit properly, it shouldn't change the chain line because that is done by what's going on with the frame.
Right.
So I think if I'm reading what you're saying properly, I think you should be okay. And yes, you can do a lot of switching around. Most of the time, stuff is called road and mountain because of, not most of the time, but oftentimes things are called road and mountain simply because of the gearing, right? They call something a road crank because it's got a 53 on it, and no one's riding a 53.
On a mountain bike.
On a mountain bike or a cross bike, right? So there's some play in there, but there's no general rule. So you got to kind of play with that stuff and see what happens. But I think what you're talking about there, you should be okay.
All right.
What's number 2, Mr. Dave Fallon?
Number 2.
From Robertito. I just like the name.
I know you like saying that.
All right.
You're going to name your next barn cat
Robertito.
2. My bikes are steel, which is real.
Nice.
And I always shy away from washing them with water and soap as described in your Bike Clean episode, unless super muddy. Instead, I use muck-off cleaner spray. This way I can avoid water altogether. I only use soap and water and solvent on the drivetrain itself. I just spray some muck-off cleaner on a rag and mindfully clean all the parts, and it looks beautiful with no water anywhere. What is the advantage of using water if it involves more cleanup and can make a steel frame rust? Thanks for the amazing show. Start with a compliment, chew us down to size, end with a compliment. Classic business writing 101.
The biggest reason to use water is mostly time, right? It's way faster to get all that stuff off, to have a brush and water and just be washing. If you've got the time, you're essentially doing, Robertito, you're essentially doing a detail clean every single time, which is totally fine if you've got the time to do that.
Yeah.
I don't wash my bike with soap and water every single time. Sometimes I do take the time, and if there's no mud, if there's mud, I'm going to use water. If there's no mud, and it's just because I've been riding it a lot, which doesn't happen so often nowadays, but then, yes, I'll do something similar to what you're doing, right? Just cleaning it with a rag, cleaning every single surface, going through and all that. But don't shy away from water. The big thing is just letting it dry. You know, take your saddle seat post out, flip that thing over, and let it dry, and you're not going to
If you haven't yet treated it with some frame saver, probably a good idea.
If you want to, for sure. Or even if you don't, the key is making sure it's dry. Don't let water sit in it. If you're doing that, you're not going to have any problems.
Right. And here is the other reason, Robertito, why we use water and not just these products that come in spray bottles. If you are riding, as I do, a ton of gravel, you end up with very fine sandpaper now adhering to the frame of your bike. And if you just take and rub that stuff off, you are essentially sanding the bike down.
Yeah, it's like rubbing compound.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So if you just spray it with water, just to loosen that stuff, get the layer off, you're going to be in a better spot. Yeah. I will say,
even if all you do is spray it, let that dry, and then clean
Yeah.
it by some method like
Yeah.
he's saying, you're going to be better off. So.
I will say that in the winter, when the hose bib is frozen outside, I will often use a method such as you describe here.
Sure.
Once it defrosts enough that the mud is now in a puddle under the bike. But yes, indeed, I understand your point. Well taken. But as Scotty D says, just take those seat posts out and make sure it dries thoroughly.
Yep, that's the key.
Mark the seat post height before you take it out.
All right, I'm going to actually read the next two, Mr. David Pound, because and thanks, Robert Tito. Thanks for the question.
Yes.
That's awesome. And if anybody else has any questions, what's the email address?
bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
I'm going to do the next two because first one is very short, and it's from Joe. And Joe says, you quoted Fletch regarding ball bearings. Love it and love your show. Joe.
We have something for you, Joe.
Joe, so we waited, and we said, hey, anybody knows what the ball bearing thing was, send it to us. Joe responded.
He did.
So we're going to send Joe
He was the first one to send the correct response.
Yes, out of the thousands of entries, Joe was the first one. And so we're going to send Joe one of our vintage Bike Shop Show T-shirts. I've already contacted him. I got the size. I waited. Mr. David Palin came over. We both just signed the back of it, and it's the vintage one that has the slightly different Bike Shop Show logo on the front breast pocket area. It says Bike Shop Show Cycling from the Mechanics underneath that. And then on the back,
it says,
in big letters, Mr. David Palin, you're wearing one right now.
I am.
It says the Bike Shop.
I don't know what it says on the back. I can't see that.
It says the Bike Shop is open across the back, and since Mr. David Palin was here today, we both signed the back of that, Scotty D and Mr. David P. So it's going to be in the mail to Joe here very
Thanks for
along with another little
for viewing. We have
surprise.
another little special surprise in there for you.
So thanks, Joe, for getting back with that, and I will send that off sometime this week. So there you go. All right, so the next one is from Trevor. He says, greetings to Scotty D and Mr. David Palin. I have been a viewer for almost a year now and have made my way through much of the back catalog.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Trevor. I'm sorry.
Parentheses. Don't worry, I skipped some of the earliest episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
I mean, knowing what was going on in the Michigan race series on the road probably doesn't really interest you at this point.
At this point, us going over race results from 4 years ago is probably not really that interesting. So he says, I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Also in parentheses, Canada. In case
our neighbor to the north knows us well enough that we don't know anything. Us Americans.
No, we think all of Canada is Windsor.
That's it. Well, I'm from the Northeast, so it's all like
Ontario. Ontario is everything, right? He says, and I'm looking forward to my first CX season. I've been telling myself this is the year for the last several years, so hopefully I actually pull through. Dude, Trevor, this has got to be the year, man.
We expect to see you.
Our goal is to turn at least one person on to cyclocross every single year. Trevor,
you are it.
This could be you this year.
Don't disappoint us.
As with most, I have a couple of bikes that I could possibly race on. My choice bike, though, is going to be my new Bomb Track Aries 2.
Arise
2. It came as a single speed, but I have outfitted it with a 10-speed GX rear derailleur, well done, and a TT bar end shifter.
Oh,
in the drop.
We like what you're doing there.
It's been a fun setup, especially when the shifter cable acts as a catch-all when bushwhacking through the forest.
It's like the cow catcher in front of a train, you know?
Man, talk about old school.
Yeah.
That is sweet.
I like it.
10-speed GX rear derailleur with a bar end shifter. Oh, my God. Luckily, my question for you doesn't have to do with that odd and slightly esoteric bike
He's
setup.
just proud of that
What do you mean,
bike.
luckily? I was looking forward to a question about that. It's a bit of a headset/front end type of question. Sometimes when I am riding this bike on washboard gravel or when I brake hard, the whole front end shakes a little bit. In general, it's fine, but other times it feels like I'm halfway to getting bucked right off the bar. The bike is a steel frame and steel fork with a standard 1 1/8" headset. My stem headset is tight, with the top cap for preload only. I learned that from the show, and my brakes, good,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
And my brakes seem to be okay. Is this an issue that is endemic to steel frames/forks? Am I always going to be stuck with a fair amount of chatter if I'm braking heavy on the front? So I'm thinking, I've already read this, but I'm thinking at this point, cantilever chatter, right? But he says, for what it's worth, I have just a cheap Tektro mechanical disc with the stock pads. Would different pads offer any help? Thanks again for the quality content, Trevor.
Well, first off, Trevor, the end of quality content ended with the last question.
Well, then, just really quickly, Trevor throws in a PS.
Yes.
I am seriously contemplating the trip to Trek CX this September. You guys have definitely been a motivator for that. So, Trek, are you listening?
Trek.
I don't know if Chad Brown listens to our show every week.
He probably should. I know he does.
He's like done with us. He's like, no, I'm done. There you go. We love it. Trevor, dude, if you come, make sure you stop by and say hi.
Yes, for sure.
And that goes for anybody. And here's the thing. For anybody that does stop by and say hi, don't assume we know who you are.
Yes.
It's just because we read your question. We read so many questions and we got so many people. Just give us a little reminder, and then we'll remember. So,
and fair warning, I'm not as tall as my podcast voice sounds.
Most of the time, people recognize us because we're talking.
Yes, it's
you
true.
and I are like sitting there bitching at each other about something, and people are like, "Man, it's like I'm listening to.
It's like I'm living in a podcast."
So, all right, back to Trevor's question.
Trevor, I
he
forgot.
did have a question in here.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I don't think that chatter is endemic to steel forks. I think it tends to happen more on steel forks because if you think about it, in the way back at the beginning of disc brakes, you're moving the brake force from way up, right up nice by the fork crown where everything is really stiff and strong and can take those forces, and you're moving that braking force all the way down to the
So now
tips.
you get some flex of the fork.
Exactly. So some forks handled that better than others back in the day. I think all modern forks, no matter what they're made of, handle it very well. So
they were designed for that.
yeah, because they were right. And early on, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but early on, a lot of forks were just a disc mount on the regular fork, right?
Right. Yeah.
So stuff has improved greatly, and you shouldn't have that problem with more modern stuff. But for me, dude, with that setup, I would be running that thing like it is, and just kind of being aware of it is a big part of it. Being very familiar, knowing when it's likely to happen, like you said, with washboard and stuff. But it sounds like if your headset is tight, there's not much else you're going to be able to do about it.
And Trevor, use this to your advantage. That's what we always say with cyclocross. Take what you have and use it to your advantage. You will be scaring the life out of anyone near you going through a corner. And they will back off and give you all kinds of space. So as you come out of that bike shattering, shaking, and shuddering, attack as hard as you can.
Right.
Because those behind you they're just going to give you space.
And as far as, also he asked about switching brake pads. That may help. But it's not necessarily going to help.
No.
So just kind of go with that and see if
if you lubricate the rotors, you will have none of this chatter.
It actually might help to go to, if you're running organic pads, it might help to go to more metallic pads because they don't grab quite as much, actually. They might squeal a little more, but
that adds to the effect.
That's right. That might even more people get out of your way. But they might squeal a little more, but they might not be as grabby. So, I mean, and go back and forth. Or you might find there's one brand of really good organic pads that actually work really well too. So I'd continue to play with it. When your pads wear out, try something else just in the interest of new pads, and try it and let us know.
For sure. Get back to us. We'll talk to you about it at Trek CX.
Yeah, when we see you there, because you're coming.
Yeah.
All right.
We decided.
Yeah. All right.
We'll keep the light on.
Mr. David Palin,
yes, sir.
We got two more.
All right. I am looking at next one. Dear. This is going to take a little bit. Okay. Deep breath. Dear Scott S. Diedenbach, Esquire, and Dave David Palin, nicknames in honor of the newly announced Bill and Ted sequel, Bill and Ted Face the Music.
So my middle initial is L. I don't know where he got S.
Hey,
that's all right, Dan from Buffalo. That's still an acceptable greeting.
Yes, indeed.
It's very good.
It's good.
Very
I like
good.
it. I like it.
Yes.
All right. I have really enjoyed listening to your podcast, especially the very helpful tech segment.
Good.
When was that? We did a very helpful one?
Which one was that?
I have a question regarding disc brake calipers and the use of CPS or spherical washers.
CPS stands for Caliper Positioning System.
There you go. It seems that different manufacturers have different instructions regarding them, which is to be expected. That's why we call them standards.
Right.
But keeping the different setups straight is tough to do, especially if you're maintaining a small fleet of bikes.
I'm wondering if this small fleet is all owned by Dan, or is he actually helping out a team?
All right.
Let's see.
Let's see. Because in my case, I have a fleet of small bikes, but not necessarily a small fleet of bikes. Some calipers require the washers underneath the fixing bolt head.
Yes, they do.
But not between the caliper and the frame.
Uh-huh.
Others require it between the caliper and frame, but not underneath the bolt head.
Correct.
You have the bum bum bum.
No.
Anyways, sad trombone, but not underneath the bolt head. Is there a general rule of thumb amongst the different makes and models? Shimano, SRAM, TRP, Tektro, etc., or amongst the different, or does each individual component need to be verified? I know when I am swapping 10-11 speed cassettes between different wheel sets with 10 or 11 speed free hub bodies, I try to make sure the appropriate spacer is used. But if I mistakenly use the wrong spacer or forget it altogether, it becomes obvious when the lock ring bottoms out before the cassette is tight or will not reach the threads if the spacer is too wide. This is not the case with the CPS washers, as they seem to help align the caliper without any detriment to braking performance. Thanks, and keep up the great work. Dan from Buffalo, New York. P.S.
Cross is coming, but gravel never stops.
Which is the meaning behind my hashtag you'll see often, hashtag gravel never ends.
There you go. Okay, Dan, there is no rule of thumb. Each manufacturer, for people that want to, so that everyone knows what we're talking about, these are those concave and convex washers that fit. They're also used on linear pull brakes. Mm-hmm. They fit in the pads. They fit one inside the other, so there's like a cup. It's almost like a cup holding a cone kind of setup. Yeah. And it can pivot in any direction, allowing things to be lined up properly. All the manufacturers, not only is it not, you can't say, oh, in SRAM, you always put those between the caliper and the frame, and in Shimano, you always put those between the bolt and the caliper. No. Mm-mm. All the manufacturers have different ways to do it based on specific brands of specific models, I should say, of those brakes. So there's no good way to do this. No. Sorry. Dude.
Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where I say, take out your phone, take a picture as you take things apart.
Yeah, well, but if you got a fleet, I'm sure he knows how to do it. It's just you got to keep it all, keep track of it all. And which bikes that I'm working on, do I need to do it this way? And on which ones do I need to do it that way? And it's a pain. Yeah, I'm sure that's a pain. And if you have tons of different stuff, there's no, only way to do it is to know which ones go which way.
And it matters.
There, you'll find a lot of people that be like, just get rid of those. Just put regular spacers in or washers or whatever. I am not a fan of that. I believe those things are there for a reason. Mm-hmm. A lot of people they question, why do I need these between the bolt and the caliper, right? They're like, okay, I can understand them being between the caliper and the frame because that's going to allow the caliper to shift and rotate a little bit and be aligned so that it's not rubbing the rotor. But why would I ever need them between the caliper and the bolt? And the reason is because if the caliper is sitting on the frame, the posts where it sits, and maybe it is not sitting exactly flush with how the bolt is going into the frame, so really you're tightening the very edge of the bolt is all that's hitting the caliper and all that's holding it in space. It doesn't have a flat surface to push against. And those make that up, right? Those CPS washers would make that space up and allow a flat surface for the entire bolt head to be pushing against. So I think they're just as important above the caliper as below the caliper. And there's no rule of thumb. You got to just know what is used for that model of brake that you're using, unfortunately. Yeah. A lot of people just think it's a SRAM thing. It's not exclusively a SRAM thing or a TRP thing or a Tektro. I mean, and Shimano uses it too sometimes. So, yeah, sorry, dude. I wish I could help you out more with that, but that's the way it is.
And I guess the possible answer, it could be an expensive answer, but the possible answer that's going to make it more convenient is to standardize the fleet.
Yes, you're right. That's the best solution. And, I know, and he says, it's not the case. They seem to help align the caliper without detriment to braking performance. They're there for a reason. I don't like it when I don't like the people. Now, I have heard some people say they feel like those break often. I've had, now that I think about it, I've maybe had one break.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say, there's weak. And they're very inexpensive. You can buy a whole bag of them for nothing.
Yep.
So I just like to use them. And
another
know where they
case
go
of do not over-torque pieces and parts. That's when they break.
Yeah, well, and they get cold. Well, when they're really cold sometimes too, and they're really cold weather, it doesn't take as much to crack them if they're old. So sorry about that, Dan. Hope you're going to have a great cross season in Buffalo. I'm not going to Rochester, unfortunately, but if you're coming to any of the World Cups,
hey, come to Alma.
Come to Alma and say hi.
We've sent Scotty D to Rochester plenty of times. It's your turn. Come west.
All right, we got one more, Mr. David Palin. Let's knock this out.
Yeah, I guess that's me, hey?
Yeah.
Gentlemen, that's you and I.
Yeah.
I love the podcast. Thanks for all the great maintenance advice. I met David in a subset of the Wide Angle Podium crew at Red Kai Ronda, and you guys are a hoot in real life, too.
Man.
Yeah. We missed you out there, Scotty D.
I know.
But I do remember sitting with Steve after the award ceremonies. We had a great time with the subset of Wide Angle Podium, John and Doug from the Gravel Lot.
The Midwest arm of,
that's it.
Of the Wide Angle Podium.
Truly the strength of the Wide Angle Podium. Sure. And I listened to the nonsense about using calipers, micrometers to check your chain stretch. Come on. Who has time for that? And is there really a need for such precision when it comes to chains? I think no. When my park tool checker says the chain is 75% worn, I change the chain. You have to change it eventually, regardless of how you measure it. Now to my question. That was just his endearing comment.
I had to get that off my chest.
Yes.
All right. Oh, Steve, I feel better, so I know Steve.
It was great riding with Steve, by the way. Steve is a good guy.
Cool.
Now to my question. I'm purchasing a new CX bike for this season, and I am seeking sizing advice.
Oh, David, this is you.
Right up my alley. The model I covet has a significantly larger trail than my existing frame.
I like that he throws in the word covet.
Yeah, that's not an easy word to just throw in.
Right
yeah. More front to center for about the same reach. I'm concerned about weight distribution and the longer trail creating an increased tendency to wash out. Is this a thing? Would a smaller frame be the solution to this?
Ooh. Do you want to take this one on, Mr. David Pellin?
Yeah, go ahead. I want to hear your thoughts first.
So, significantly larger trail than mine. So, what trail is? So that people know is if you can extend a line down from the head tube straight all the way to the ground, how far behind that point is the contact patch of the tire?
That is trail.
Right. So that is trail.
It is affected by fork rake, but it is not the same as fork rake.
It is not the same as fork rake. The common example a lot of people give to you is a shopping cart, right? Mm-hmm. That the wheels on a shopping cart are actually behind where the point of the axle of the shopping cart is, and that's why they trail like they do. Longer trail tends to give you a bike that goes in a straight line
very well.
Better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot of the times what people want is more trail. They just don't know it. From my experience. When I was talking about frame building, when I was doing my frame, one of the things Dave said is people think like they really want short trail. And really, he's like, this is one of those things where you got to kind of read between the lines and listen to other things that they're saying and decide, do they really want short trail or do they just think they want short trail? If you start riding bikes with really short trail, you want to get off of them quickly.
Yes.
Because they're not fun to ride.
A unicycle has very short trail.
Yes. At the same time.
It will turn like a unicycle turns. You know, you'd say very choppy.
At the same time, you can have too much trail and have something feel lethargic and like you're muscling
that low rider bike.
So the key is, like, in my opinion, what is the entire build process and what all the other things going on? So,
so without knowing what his existing frame is, to say that it's larger than your existing frame doesn't
necessarily
much.
Mean enough. Right.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily.
So if your existing frame is a cross bike, and the larger is because it's a gravel bike, then that will affect its handling. The advantage of a short trail bike is its ability to turn on a dime.
Right.
Of course, that can also put you over the bar.
Exactly. It doesn't mean it's going to ride better. Yeah. A lot of times people think, because if it turns quick, it's better. No, not necessarily. So by going with a smaller frame, I'm trying to figure out, like you're saying, kind of reading between the lines here. If you're going with a smaller frame, you're not really changing that trail per se. You're changing your position on the bike. Now, if you're on a bike that's too small, you tend to have your weight more forward anyways, because you need to put your body somewhere. Right.
So you tend to get a longer stem, put your body out forward more,
the front easier.
And you will indeed. So I would say, if anything, no. I wouldn't go with a size smaller.
Yeah, no.
Would I go with the bike that you covet? Yes.
Yeah, I would. I don't think the things he mentions are deal breakers. I wouldn't worry about them as being deal breakers for sure. It's going to depend on so many other things. You might actually discover that the bike you have didn't have enough trail.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to get comfortable with what we've ridden a lot and think that's quote unquote normal. And then you ride something different, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's why I always ask people when they get on a bike and they're like, yeah, this doesn't feel good. I'm like, okay, hang on. Does it not feel good, or does it just feel different than what you're riding?
Right.
Because usually that's what they mean.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And it's like, if you put as many miles in this slightly different geometry as you did in your old one, you might discover you like it better.
So here's what you do, Steve. Go for a test ride.
Yes.
Even if they say, hey, you know, we can't let you take it out for a long test ride or whatever, take it off the pavement, and if you can find a hill, even better, and do some switchbacks on it. And if you can do them at speed, even better, to figure out, because that's where you're going to really feel that trail in a cyclocross course and in a cyclocross bike, is when you're trying to do tight turns at any kind of speed. Yeah. You want to have enough trail that is stable, but not so much trail that you're having trouble getting around those 180s.
And remember, too, there's a lot of things that that cause you to be fast going around a cyclocross course. If you give
lack
up,
of brakes.
It's like I was talking to this with. Have you ever heard of the guy JB Hancock?
No. Oh, PT.
The PT Barnum. We were actually just talking about this. Is people do this a lot of the time with tires. They select a tire for one element of the course, right? It's like, well, I can't get around that on that corner unless I have a Limus.
Right.
And it's like, but so what? Does that mean are you slower everywhere else on the course, but you're faster in that one corner? No, you choose a tire for the entire course, just like you do a frame. So just because something might not allow you to take turns as tight, might still make you faster around the entire lap for other reasons. So,
and Steve, we know where you live.
At least David does.
And you should be thinking, whether you have a separate gravel bike or not, you should be thinking about an awful lot of gravel. So if indeed this bike is going to serve both for cross and for gravel, keep that in mind, because the gravel roads you have down there are beautiful.
Yes.
They are gorgeous. Here. Yeah. Sometime, we invited at the top of the show, and you, for whatever reason, you stuck it out, and you made it this far into the show. I will invite you again. Steve, come up, join us on Sunday.
Yeah.
We'll show you the dirt roads up here. They're not gravel in the same sense that crazy gravel you have down there We have our brown pavement that we love. Come on up and ride with us.
Because Steve says, see you guys at Cincy CX, which I hope we do. But, dude.
Don't wait.
Get up here to Alma.
Yeah.
What do you mean with Cincy?
We will see you.
We will see you at Alma.
Yeah. Hey, like I said, we know where you are. Just give Mr. and Mrs. Voice of American Cyclocross a call.
Yeah.
They've got room, if not in the car, in the trailer. Just come on up. We'll see you in Alma.
That's funny.
And speaking of Cincy CX and Alma,
yes,
I will be on stage. So that's good news for those who were trying to race behind me at Cincy CX last year. I will not be on the course. You won't have to get around me. I will be on stage announcing at Cincy CX this year. So make sure to come out. And
so hang on. We're going to have you and Scott
at
Cincy and at Alma. So... oh, my goodness. This is going to be...
almost too much goodness.
Yeah. I mean, why would you... this is like the double header of cyclocross. Alma GP and Cincy CX.
Yeah.
People should just come. Get up to Alma. Because that will be the first race, which is only... is it 3 weeks? Is it even 3 weeks away, Mr.
Wow.
I think it is. 2 weekends,
right.
And it's the third weekend after this. So, man, oh, man, CX is coming so fast.
Yeah.
If you don't have your stuff... you better get it. Get it back on your frame. Get going. Get those tubulars glued and all that stuff.
If you are in the Midwest, Monday Fun Days are up in Alma, and you can race on or ride on and learn the course at the Alma GP. And Thursdays are CX Pre-X in Ann Arbor. Starting up with this Thursday, CX Pre-X will be our clinic for teaching people how to get on and off their bikes. We have everything from super beginners through experienced racers, and we have a guest at our final one, which is the Thursday before the Alma GP, where we will have our favorite Texar Canadian.
Oh, can we announce it?
Sure, let's announce it.
Okay, tell us who it is.
Tyler Cloutier will be teaching at CX Pre-X. He will be at, I believe he's going to be at that final Fun Day Monday or Monday Fun Day in Alma. Right. We get some stuff that we do midweek, and then Thursday he will be at CX Pre-X.
That's going to be amazing. So,
yes, indeed.
All right, well, the other thing I want to mention, Mr. Dave Pound, before we sign off is I hope, Sonny Gilbert, I hope that this show lived up to your expectations.
I hope so.
If you've listened this far, and I know if she's listened this far...
she's had a long workout.
She's going to send us a message somehow on Twitter or something, and I'll be like, what? Sure. You guys calling me out? Can't wait to get to hang out with Sonny this year at Trek.
You know who got to hang out with Sonny?
Who?
You think I'm not a very tall person? I know.
Who? Oh, Dr. Tracy Berman.
Dr. T went all the way out to Colorado to
saw
hang
the pictures
with the Katies and with Sonny.
It's her and Sonny, the doctors of cyclocross. There
Indeed.
we go. So.
Indeed.
All right, Mr. Dave Palin, if people want to get in touch with you...
Mr. David Palin on the Instagram and on the Twitter. If you have sent me messages on Facebook and you haven't heard back from me, don't be insulted. Don't be hurt. I am not on Facebook anymore. I've yet to delete it, so you probably don't get a deletion method or whatever you get. I am not on Facebook, so do not bother. You can if you want, but you won't hear back from me on Facebook.
Right. And likewise for me, you can hit me up at BikeShopCX on both Twitter and Instagram, and I'll get back with you if you need to. Or you can always send an email to the show at bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
Bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
And that's for tech questions or just to say, hey, keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Or, hey, this show sucks.
No, don't say that.
No, don't say that.
If you have that comment, send it to...
all right, Mr. David Palin, I'll see you next time as we get closer to cyclocross.
Cross is here.
I know. Oh, my God.
Be Alma before you know PT Barnum. Glen Clavel, Glen Gramble, Glen Cross.
Do you have anything to say?
Glen Close. The bike shop is closed.
All right, that is a show for this time. I hope everybody dug it. We'll see you back here again in 2 weeks. We're going to get our second show in the month of August in, and we will be right up against cyclocross season starting. So, man, oh, man, it's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that. Again, as we said, questions, send them to bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
Bikeshopshow@gmail.com.
And we'll get those on the show. Hope to see as many people as possible, both at the Alma GP and at the Trek World Cup. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that to get here. So we'll see you all there. All right, I think that's enough of my yapping. Again, thank you to all of our show sponsors. Whoop. Get over to whoop.com. Grimpeur Brothers. Get some coffee and Health IQ. Don't forget the code word WAP for healthiq.com. So, all right, I think that's it for me. Enough of my yapping. I'm out of here. Thanks for listening. I hope you are all getting out there and riding. If you are getting out there and riding, don't forget, be careful out there. And more importantly, take care of each other out there. And until next time, the Bike Shop is Cadeau.